So this summer I did both the C&O Canal and the Gap trails, and I got some feedback that it'd be helpful to know what I took along with me and how I packed. And really the only difference between the two trips, I took the same equipment, really just the weather dictated that I take a little bit extra clothes for the Gap. So I'll make mention of it, but ultimately what you guys wear is whatever makes you the most comfortable. And so I'll just make, like I said, slight mention to what I took along. So we originally wanted to do this outside because it's more appropriate and the lighting's a little bit better, but it has not been cooperating with us at all, the weather that is. It's been raining nonstop. So without delaying this anymore, we're just going to do it in the basement and we'll go over kind of the nuts and bolts of what I took. So as I'm going through everything, what I want to kind of highlight most of all, especially for these two trails, is that what you bring doesn't really matter. This is just what works for me. Most of this stuff, my wife and I use backpacking. You'll see it in her videos for Massanutten Trail and for Appalachian Trail. And we just share some of this equipment that we picked up over the years. So what works for me may not work for everyone. If you have a backpack, a bicycle, and a good attitude, you can do these trails. So to make this logical, we'll start with the bicycle that I took, and then we'll work from front to back through what equipment I had and how I carried it. So the bike I took along is a Salsa Fargo GX model. I believe it's the lower model of the Fargo. Essentially, it is a mountain bike with drop handlebars. And really, I saw all types of bicycles out there. For most of these trails, road bike or a hybrid, you could get away with that as well. So bicycle doesn't matter. This one worked for me, very efficient, but it's a steel frame, rigid bicycle, similar to 1980s technology. And I think if you have that, you have what it takes to do the C&O or the Gap. Just one note, the Fargo does come with a rear wheel. However, I currently have it mounted to the trainer. It's a little bit of a pain in the butt to swip back and forth, so bear with me. It's on a trainer right now. I had a rear wheel with me on the trip. Ding! All right, so now we'll transition to how I set up the bike. So starting with the front, I have a Revelate Designs Sweetroll with a little bit of an attachment on the outside in order to carry a little extra gear. It's essentially a dry bag with some straps on the backside. And it mounts to the center of the handlebars and then rolls up on the sides. I have a little bit of trouble with these drop bars, but ultimately I don't carry much in here. I'm a big fan of having the front end as light as possible. So all I carried inside the Sweetroll is my down quilt. This is a Enlightened Equipment down quilt. It's set for 45 degrees. So doesn't handle too cold of weather, but very light. I carried along tent stakes along the front because they don't fit very well in any of my other packs. And so I just strapped them underneath here. And then I also carried along inflatable sleeping pad. I rolled it out a little bit longer so it was about the same size as the stakes and mounted them both on the front of the bike. And that's all I carried up front. For the seat, or for the Gap rather, it was colder, so I added an additional sleeping bag. I had a 25-degree sleeping bag and the down quilt with me. But that's all I have on the front of the bike. So now we'll move to the center portion of the bike, what takes up the frame and in the middle. And it's very important to have the weight as central and as low on the bike as you possibly can to maintain good handling characteristics. So these three packs are all produced by Oveja Negra, and the reason I wanted to get the same brand for the central portion of the bike is so that the straps align very well with each other. The system kind of works together. All right, so now we'll transition to what I carry in the upper center portion of the bike. So I have an Oveja Negra tank bag and then this Feedbag, and they mount like so. And these are what I access the most. So I'll carry snacks that I need to sustain me for the ride. And then I'll also carry things like my phone in order to document the trip. If I see something interesting, I can reach into the Feedbag real quick, pull out the phone, and capture it for you guys. For the Gap, since I had shorter days, I took along a bike light with me. I did not bring one on the C&O Canal. So this is one I picked up off of Amazon. It's a Revtronic. It was only about 60 bucks and it's very, very bright. So external battery pack lasts several hours. It worked out wonderfully on the trip. So it mounts, I mount it personally underneath the frame right here. I have an open space that's not used. And then this mount either goes on your helmet or in my case, I carried it on the bike like so. All right, so we'll move to the center portion of the bike. I've got an Oveja Negra, kind of a half bag. It doesn't take up the full frame because I use it for multiple bicycles. But at any rate, this is where I carry my heaviest stuff. And so I have a lot of maintenance stuff for me. I like to ride tubeless tires. So a lot of the maintenance stuff you'll see me carry along is just to maintain that tire system. Ultimately, if everything fails, I carry an extra tube with me. I've got some tire sealant, some thread and a needle to repair tires if I need to, a lighter for emergencies, an extra CO2 cartridge, a headlamp for whenever I'm in camp or if my bike light runs out of battery. I carry some zip ties because you never know when you need a good zip tie. Some ibuprofen, becoming increasingly important as I grow older. And then I also carry along a external battery pack in order to make sure the phone does not die on me, in order to make sure I can maintain footage for the entire trip and call for a ride on the backside. And then I also usually carry along some sort of 550 cord with me, a little strand, again, just for emergencies. You never know when you'll need it. Lastly, I carry along some sort of water filtration system. So for the C&O, since they have those nice hand pumps that I documented in the video, I just carried along some AquaMira as a just in case those pumps weren't on. They were, and I never touched this. So if you can confirm that those pumps are on, I would feel safe saying you don't need any sort of hydration on the C&O. For the gap, I carried along a Sawyer filter that we usually use for backpacking. So very important, especially on longer trips, to maintain water filtration, just because, you know, Giardia or some other waterborne disease will end your trip pretty quickly. I also carry along a bike pump with me. This one acts as a small floor pump. You can fold it out and then use it like so, and it mounts along underneath a water bottle holder. So in the videos, you can see it probably mounted along the down tube of the bike. Around the bike pump, I usually carry some duct tape or tactical tape because just like the zip ties and the 550 cord, you never know when it might be useful. It really doesn't add much weight to the bike, so it's a good value. Okay, and so now let's move to the upper rear portion of the bike. What I will mention is I always take along some sort of very, very bright reflective light just to maintain safety. So anytime I pulled into a town or off of the trails, I made sure this was on. I also have a tool pouch that I carry along, again made by Oveja Negra, so it all integrates, and it mounts right here on the rear end of the frame. And this is what I carry my essentials in. I take this on every single ride with me everywhere I go. So within this toolkit, I carry along, like I said, things that I take with me every ride. Got some chain lube, some tire sealant with a pointy tip so I can actually install it within the tires, a CO2 cartridge, a tire plug repair kit. This is a valve core remover. I carry along an extra valve stem, and then this is a Schrader to Presta adapter that I take along just in case I can't find the right type of bike pump at a local town that I visit. I also have a Crank Brothers M19 multi-tool, a tube patch kit in case I end up, you know, burning through all of this equipment and have to use the tube, and then that even gets a hole in it. Here we have an applicator for the CO2 cartridge in order to be able to use it. And then I carry a section of chain with me, so roughly 5 or 6 links, and then the power link to go ahead and install it, or if the chain just breaks and I don't need to add that. Carry along a spoke wrench with me in case the wheels get out of true. Some smaller zip ties just because they fit within that pack. And then tire levers, and I'll carry 1 or 2 depending on which bike I'm riding at the time. But with all of these things, if an emergency happens on trail, at least related to the bike or the wheel system, I'm able to repair it independently without having to rely on anybody else, and that's very important when going into the backcountry. All right, so we'll transition to what I have in the rear end of the bike. So I carry along Revelate Designs tail bag, and it mounts underneath the seat like this. It comes with just really a dry bag that's form-fitted and slides down inside the bag behind it. And so in the videos you can see, you just kind of expand it or contract it depending on how much gear you have in here. For the gap, I was pretty much at capacity for the bag systems you see here. But we'll get into specifically what I took. And I usually carry my sleep systems and clothes in the back end of the bike because ultimately it's about mid-weight. Again, like I said, I don't like anything on the front end of the bike. So for the C&O Canal, I took along a tent. And this is a big Agnes tent, and I carry these. They're relatively lightweight, but I put them down in the base of that bag, as close, again, to the center of the bike as possible. And then outside of that, towards the rear end, I had the clothes that I accessed the most for sleeping when I got to camp. I wanted to put on a jacket or whatever else. But that's all I had in there was just the tent and extra clothes. For the C&O Canal, or for the Gap rather, I tried out a hammock system for the first time, and I got this as a gift a couple years ago, and it's about the same weight as the tent, but including the poles and everything else, it's just much more compact. And since I was taking extra clothes, I needed a more compact sleeping system. So I mounted this inside the seat bag as close to the bike as I possibly could, and then just put extra jackets and stuff on the back side of that. All right, so that's really what I took along on both trips. Like I said, the only differences were to account for the weather. I just took along extra sleeping systems and extra clothes. Ultimately, this is pretty a lightweight setup. And if you have a rack and panniers, you're just going to be able to carry much more and be a lot more comfortable because you'll have some modern conveniences with you. I use this same system for mountain biking, so I want it to be very light, very durable, and I only take along the bare necessities for what I need. Same is true for clothes. So I had some riding shorts, some overshorts, a t-shirt, and a lightweight jacket, and that's all I took on the C&O Canal because it was summertime, it was nice and warm, and then I had protective equipment such as cycling gloves and a helmet and glasses. For the Gap, because it was roughly 20 degrees outside, I had along some extra sleeping stuff, some base layers. I carried along an extra jacket and an extra vest just because I was afraid my 45-degree bag and that hammock setup was going to be cold at night. But ultimately, as I mentioned at the beginning, clothing is up to you. Helmet is a necessity. You'll see in a lot of the video I have the helmet off, and that's really just a testament to how safe the trails are. There's no traffic on them. The only traffic you'll see is the occasional runner and the occasional cyclist, and the danger is waving to them, taking one hand off the handlebars. But anytime you go into a town, turn on the reflective lights, make sure you're seen, wear something bright if you have it available, and put the helmet on for sure, because the last thing you want to do is have a fun trip turn into something tragic. All right, so that about wraps it up. And what you'll notice is I didn't include much food other than the snacks. The nice part about the C&O and the Gap is that water's relatively available, or readily available rather, and so is food because you're hitting towns about every 30 minutes to an hour. So that really helps you keep the weight nice and light. If there's anything that I forgot to mention, or if you have any questions about something I mentioned, feel free to leave a comment. I'll do my best to get back to you right away. I'm also going to include a description of specifically what each item is, hopefully under center pack, and then include the description below. So hopefully that decreases some frustration that I usually have if someone does a review video or a gear video and then blasts through it real quick and doesn't say what it is they actually have with them. So I have a couple of trips planned in the near future to be a little more off-road oriented, so stay tuned or subscribe if you want to see those whenever we're able to get to them. And otherwise though, if you take away anything from here, is hopefully you see how simple it is to do a trip on either the C&O or the Gap, and the very most important thing is just to get out there and experience it yourself.